Namaste, everyone. Good morning if you're in Jamaica, still a little bit before noon. Good afternoon or good evening, wherever you are joining us in the world. Welcome to this webinar. I would love if you could just put your name on the chat. Just tell us where you're from, first of all. And maybe you can even just give a sentence or two of what drew you to come into this into this parenting during a pandemic webinar. And of course, if there are any questions that arise at any time during this webinar, we will address them. So this is right here on your right-hand side is a wonderful place to just say hello, where you're from, why you're here, and of course, if there are any burning questions that you have that you'd like us to answer. So why don't we begin? I am going to begin before I go any further to pull up onto the screen our two soul sisters, Rain and Sky. So give me a moment. So Rain and Sky, I know you're here. Oh, and you're both together. How cool is that? I'm going to invite you on the screen. So just look out now. You're going to see an invite to come up onto the screen. Are you sure you want to invite them? Yes, I'm sure I want to invite them. Okay, hold on a second. Oh, you can't hear me. Hold on.
Here we are. We're going to have to get really close.
And hold on one
so we can be in the same shot. Yes. Sharon, we're not hearing you. We've lost your audio. We could actually hear it better when your headphone was in, but it appears that you took your headphone out and it looks like you're on mute. Mercury is retrograde, so yes. The technology blips are so real. Hi, Janet, Natasha, Donna in the building from Canada. Amazing. Charmaine. As grateful as I am to be in Florida, I would love to be in Canada to enjoy the fall foliage. OMG. What? So seems like Sharon is having technology challenges, which was the reality of my day yesterday. So compassion to you, Sharon, because I'm sure it's freaking you out. But why don't we just jump in? We are happy to give a brief introduction, which I think is what Sharon was trying to do. Not always easy for us to talk about ourselves, but we are the Soul Sisters, Rain and Sky Jarrett. And both mindfulness experts. We bring the work of mindfulness to different facets of both our personal lives and the work that we do in the world. And so this is a coming together for us where we bring our respective areas of expertise, me working in the corporate space, working with executives and leaders, and Rain as a professor, as a parent, as a community builder, bringing that expertise. And we have studied what we are defining as the parent leader, that person that has the unique role of juggling both of these demands in this unprecedented time, right? In the backdrop of a global pandemic, in the backdrop of a tsunami of crises. And we have really a lot of internalizing what does this unprecedented moment serve our human life and mean for this right? Who is doing these double roles, trying to be the boss at work, while parenting kids and doing homeschooling, which is not a role they've ever had to fulfill. You have ever had to fulfill, right? So that's the perspective that we're bringing to our conversation today. and really hope to share the gifts of mindfulness with each of you. We'll talk a little bit about what mindfulness has done for us personally in our personal lives, and how we feel that it can support parent leaders in this unprecedented moment. Amen. I'm gonna just check in
with Sharon
and see how she's.
Yeah, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, I think what we're gonna have to do just with sketchy internet is when I'm speaking, if you just look up at the top of your mic and mute yourself, and I'm not gonna speak much today. I'm gonna turn it over to you guys, but I wanted to just, talk a little bit about why I felt this particular topic was so so important right now, because I'm in it. I'm in it, lock, barrel. So I just wanted to share my little story about parenting during the pandemic and why I reached out to these two amazing women, because we're sisters and brothers here on this journey. We are the first of all, we are the first generation of parents who are raising children where these devices are part of their bodies, right? These devices are body parts. They don't go anywhere without them. My parents didn't raise me that way. In fact, I grew up in the bush here in Jamaica. We didn't even have a real phone, much less a cell phone, until I was in my 20s. And that is the truth. I come from back a bush, right? So now this generation, we're raising children with these devices in their hands, and then all of a sudden, we're already struggling with that, right? That has been such a big struggle for me as a parent. And then comes this pandemic, right? There's no precedent for how to raise a child during a pandemic. And then on top of that, all of a sudden, all our children at home doing distance learning. Personally, for me, my 21-year-old junior in college came home. So I have a 21-year-old who had flown the coop, who is now fully on back at home, sharing a bedroom with my 12-year-old girl, Noah. So Rain and I have a girl that we both share with the name Noah, N-O-A, which is so interesting. And my 12-year-old is online through a Jamaican school. And then I have a 15-year-old son who is in the other room, who should be right now in boarding school in Canada. But, we worked our butts off to make this dream a reality for him, and for us, it was just time. We're so excited. And now we can't even get there because Canada is not releasing any study permits. So from March until now, 6-7 months later, it has been nonstop, all of us in the house, on top of hubby in the house, right? So I wanted to say what it really felt like for me was almost like a massive loss, like a massive, even a death of an old paradigm, a death of an old way of being. When the pandemic first hit and everybody was shut down in the entire world and the kids came home in March, this was even before school had caught up with the online thing. First of all, there's the same process that you would go through if you were dealing with someone who had died, or a divorce, or a big loss in some way. All of a sudden there's denial. What do you mean there's no school? What do you mean everybody's at home all at once? Okay, all right, so everybody's home all at once. Well, this will be a couple of weeks, right? And then they'll go back to school. No, that was not happening. All of a sudden, all the schools are trying to catch up and, do the best that they can and provide online schooling. So that happened. And then I'm sure all of you like me were like, all right, we'll get through that. And then it will be summertime. And then in September, they'll all go back to school, right? And that didn't happen, right? So still a little denial. And that denial for me actually turned into a little bit of anger at this point, because by the end of summer, not being able to travel, not being able to take my kids somewhere, I always find summer for us as a learning experience. We always do some kind of learning experience through travel. So that didn't happen. We were just all ready to get back to normal in September, and I still have all 3 kids at home. So then came that kind of anger, because I also had my own gig going on. as a leader in my community. I was starting this new online program. And I really needed quiet time. I needed my own space. I needed not to hear the word mom every 15 minutes by a different child. And so from anger, then it went into the next stage of grief, which is like bargaining, bargaining with your kids for a little, a little structure, a little routine, a little cleanliness, a little more space on the kitchen table, a little less dishes left over from their snacks. And like, can you stop eating so much? Because I can't go to the supermarket anymore, like, I don't know about you, but just kids at home, they're just nonstop eating. And then I went through the next stage. I mean, honestly, I did go through all these stages. I was kind of feeling depressed, really like, shit, man, this thing is not ending for now. It may not even end. And kids are, they're not, maybe not going to be going back to school in January. Even my son and this big dream about him going to Canada, we've been waiting and waiting and waiting for the study permit. It may not happen. So there was this level of depression, and depression for my children, our children, this generation. Like, what are they missing out on not having that in-person school experience? How is their socialization skills? How are they going to be developed? How strange is this? And I got kind of really sad and depressed. And then just through getting to a place very, very recently, by the way, very recently, because especially with my son in Canada, this was a big, big hope. But we got completely the news that forget it, Canada is not taking anybody. Don't try it, just get it out of your head. Big, big money pay on everything, right? So we've come to a place now of acceptance. I'm accepting that I am going to be doing this for a while. And therefore, how can I be better at it? How can I be the best version of myself during this time? It may never end. This may be our new reality. And so I want these beautiful soul sisters who are masters at this, because what I love about what you guys do and the audience that you speak to is we're really talking to parent leaders, right? So parents who are leaders in their own homes and their own families, or parents who are leaders in other communities, whether they have a business or they're a leader in their job, or they run a community, a church, a service, a foundation, whatever. How can we, who are all working at home, be more mindful, be more present, be more at balance, and be our most authentic self during this pandemic? So I'm going to shut up now and pass it over to you experts.
Thank you for sharing that, Sharon. And I think, I see a lot of my experience in what you shared. I'm sure same is true for the parents who are with us today.
Janet says, oh yes, the preparation of meals and buying snacks is wearing me thin. My son is 18. So
the struggle is real.
Yes,
is real.
Just to affirm you, Sharon, as well, because I'm sure for many of the listeners, there were moments of yes, oh gosh, amen, right? Just this shared experience of what, there's pieces of your story that I think we can all relate to.
For sure. And the parent leader, I think, requires some time to unpack and to really discuss who that is and what are perhaps some of the challenges or the pain points of people who are with us in this talk and for us ourselves. So the parent leader is somebody who balances the two roles of being in a position of leadership, having responsibility, decision making, but also wants to be the best version of themselves in that space as a leader in their workspace, but also the best parent that they can be. Somebody who is serious about the impact that they want to make in the world, and that they acknowledge that their acts, their efforts, their everyday choices in how they work, lead, and parent are in fact making a difference in the world and is intentional. the parent leader about how they want to show up for these people and how they want to show up for these moments that matter the most. So these goals are very noble in just wanting to be the best leader and the best parent, and they might not be ending world poverty or hunger, but they're still very, very important, and that we really pride ourselves in these goals as a parent leader. A parent leader is also someone who is very attuned to the social and emotional development of their children.
Which Sharon was talking about as well.
Right.
And worrying that they're not getting the best
that
social
they need,
emotional development
that they need.
Yeah.
And for me, this is what sparked my journey, Sharon, as a mindful parent, but also a conscious parent, and that philosophy and paradigm is really the umbrella under which mindful parenting falls. So I can talk a little bit about that as well, since we're on the topic. There is some consensus in the world of child development and parenting that there are what we call traditional models of parenting, right? And a traditional parent sort of believes in these ideologies that parenting comes naturally, that, you know, this is something that is biologically natural, absolutely, but that the know-how of parenting is also natural.
As if there was a book written,
right? That you are born with that know-how, right? So traditional parents also, and this is really important, they create these fixed best versions of their children based on standards which include cultural and trauma-enforced standards, really, and goals. And that their main goal is to raise a successful child no matter what, right? And no matter what the cost is. And usually the cost is connection, right? So whether you realize it or not, as a traditional parent, your parenting is driven by your philosophies, right? So your belief system influences your behaviors and your goals, right? So what you think influences what you do. So if you subscribe to a traditional parenting paradigm, right, you have this philosophy of correction over connection. And so that informs your approach as a parent. On the other side, a conscious parent, under which mindful parenting falls, we believe that there is a biological component of parenting that is natural, but that the emotional attunement that is required, right, is not natural. And that is really where people falter, right? So it's really a paradigm shift from traditional parenting. It is something that at times can be seen as controversial. It's really this focus of connection versus control, right? And to that point of being controversial, conscious parents believe that we're sort of brainwashed by the traditional parenting paradigms, right? That you see children not as versions of ourselves, not as mini-me's, but as their own person, their own individual beings with their own thoughts, their own feelings and ideas and personalities and goals, right? And this is something that Dr. Shefali talks about. She's sort of a thought leader in this conscious parenting space. So to round it off, traditional parents, oftentimes they want this connection, you know, and they really believe that this connection is important, but their belief systems, right, under the traditional parenting modules make it very difficult for them to establish this connection. And I think an example might be helpful, Sis, to help people differentiate, right, the difference between traditional and conscious and mindful parenting. So say, for example, your child is having a meltdown, right? So if your child is 7 or under, or around mid-age 11 or so, even teenagers, right? They're having a moment of very big emotions, right? Our tendency is to correct this behavior, right? We move as traditional parents from a place of authority, right? And so the tendency might be to scold, to correct, to ask, what is wrong with you? Or why are you behaving this way? A conscious parent who adopts mindful parenting practices and philosophies will ask themselves, what is at the core of my child's behavior? Like, what is going on for my child in this moment? And instead of scolding in a moment that they're not able to process correction, right? When they're having these heightened states of stress, right? These big emotions, to perhaps give them a hug when they're having a meltdown.
And to validate their experience.
Yeah. But from a traditional parenting module, that is not the tendency, right? That is not the impetus.
What is wrong with you? Why are you reacting this way?
Cut
Why
it
are
out,
you getting
stop. Why are you getting
Stop crying. Why are you crying?
Right. And
why are you crying?
Correction over connection, right, is really what is at the core here. So
or even to say, oh, Sharon, you're off.
Even just just to interject here, you know, I was raised with the I can still hear it in my head, like when we used to cry or whatever. I remember my dad saying children should be seen but not heard. Like, you can see them, but we don't want to hear them crying. Keep them in another room. You know what I mean? Like, we were not allowed really a lot of self-expression. So I love this.
Okay, so we're having to navigate. So we're just going to ask everyone to see with us. Yeah, so we can all identify over the years of our socialization and upbringing models or examples of traditional parenting, right? And it's interesting because Sky and I are blessed to be able to live together. We're living together again as
COVID
adults.
brought us together. That's one of the byproducts of COVID.
Yes, and we also have our mom, my mom, living with us, who absolutely subscribes from the traditional parenting philosophy. And so, you know, a conscious parent who adapts to mindful practices really has to be brave. It requires bravery, it requires courage, it requires true introspection and a heightened sense of self-awareness, right? That there are alternative approaches. And you know, that has been huge for us, but there is potential for conflict. So here we have my mom, who is for sure a traditional parent, right? Still open-minded and still open to other perspectives, but she's grounded in that paradigm and belief system. And then you have me, who is a conscious parent, and we have conflict. So, you know, just having the curiosity of wanting to know what conscious parenting is really a big deal and is really cool. So I want to just name that. And so to close, I just want to share that, you know, bringing in the mindfulness piece.
Oh, somebody said, say hi to Gina for me. Colleen went
we will. And mommy is amazing, right? My mom is such an inspiration in terms of what a parent looks like and how a parent shows up and how much sacrifice is required, right? She really admires connection with her children. I think our relationship with mommy is one of the most important things. And I want to say that because, again, traditional parents, they want that connection with their children. I said it earlier, but their belief system provides hurdles to that. So it requires this mind shift. And so mindful parenting, and this is something I've been living. This is my life. This is my experience with my child, right? Being 7, it's been 7 years. Mindful parenting then really is an approach, a philosophy, and it really is about slowing down, stepping back, being present, and understanding your child's behavior at its core, and choosing to respond versus react every time you're triggered, every minute of the day, in a way
every 15 minutes, right, Sharon? Yes. It's those interruptions, unexpected, you're resentful of them, you're like, what do you want from me now? Can I just have a minute?
I wish you were at school so I could have back my day, right? Yes. Mindful parenting brings that ability and that capacity to increase your ability to choose, right? To choose to respond versus being that reactive, which is our tendency, in a way that's effective, in a way that's fair, sometimes firm, right? But also helps to maintain the well-being of your child, of the parent, of you, and to establish and maintain a healthy parent-child relationship and a healthy relationship with self.
And what I'm taking from that, right, to Sharon's point of life in 2020 has thrown us curveballs that were so unexpected, and our
constant
traditional models of what parenting looks like, and the opportunities, like you putting in so much time, investment, and effort in enabling the opportunity for your son to go to boarding school in Canada. But no, that's not possible. And in your mind, I'm sure, Sharon, being an amazing parent is giving him, part of being an amazing parent is to be able to give him that opportunity. Yeah. And now life has taken that opportunity for him. So what does good parenting look like absent of the plans you had for your child and your parenting of your child, right? And so I think if we can shift and reframe that to say, from a conscious parenting perspective, what does it mean to serve and support our kids through this, in this moment? Because I guarantee history books will be written on the unprecedented moment of 2020, right? And we will be writing our personal history books. What will this chapter in the book of life that each of us is writing right now, what will it say about the person that we showed up as?
Yeah.
What will it say about the parent that we were in this moment? What will it say about the leader that we showed up as in this moment? What are we taking a stance for? How are we signaling to the world and to the people that are impacted by our parenting and leadership of who we are and what our imprint is that we want to leave on them? And if we can slow life down just a little bit and pause and reflect on that, it will enable us to bring a different kind of intentionality to these moments of interaction, right? Life is shaped by the single moments, the sum of these moments that we have with our kids. And so when your son or daughter, mom, in the middle of you trying to prepare for a webinar, do you respond with the warranted aggression, right? Understandable aggression, like that unexpected interruption and the constant interruption is understandable. But to have that consciousness to say, this interruption is unexpected, I can react with anger and frustration and some annoyance.
At the cost of connection.
At the cost of connection. Or I can choose to respond with loving compassion, right? And in a way that will foster and nurture that connection, so that when they look back on this moment, what will they say about what it was like to be on the other side of you? So that's a question that I want each of you to really think about, right? What do you want? Think about the people in your world, your kids, your family, the teams that you work with, the communities that you lead. What do you want them to say about how they experienced you in this unprecedented moment, which, like 9/11, for example, is a reference that we go back to as a universe. Everyone can share their 9/11 experience, right? 5, 10, 20 years from now, we will all be looking back at this moment. So who do you want to be in this moment?
Yeah,
right?
I think that's powerful, sis. And I've had moments of intense stress and overwhelm. And I think we should talk a little bit about the context, or social context and environment in a minute. But I wanted to share this point where life was just throwing us curveballs left, right, and center.
Still is.
As if COVID was not enough. As if the grandeur of that was not significant enough to just totally turn your bonkers. Personally, it was a very trying time, and still is a very trying time for us. And so stress was up here, right? And so, anyone would say you're warranted for responding in a way that you respond, being reactive, right? But I remember having that gut check moment, and our children are mirrors for us, right? They provide a reflection and force us to be introspective. When I was trying to balance working online, I was trying to get ready for a lecture that started in about 15 minutes. And Noah comes to me in that moment and says, "Mommy, I need help with something online." Could you choose a different moment?
Like right now?
It's right now, right? And because she's falling behind, I'm seeing the anxiety show up for her. And so she needs me in that moment, right? Nothing else is important. She needs my support. And so I go to her, but I bring with me the anxiety of what is happening, the heaviness of what I'm experiencing. And she looks at me and she says, "Mommy, you're making this very hard for me." And in that moment of presence, instead of scolding her and reprimanding her and correcting her and saying, "But who exactly do you think you're talking to? That I'm making it hard for you?" I tuned in to what she was saying to me, and I said, "Thank you for letting me know."
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, I took a breath, because we always have our breath as refuge, right? And we can talk for hours about the neuroscience behind breathing and what it does to us when we're in moments of stress and overload, right? Very powerful. But it is because I'm operating from those principles, right, of conscious and mindful parenting that I was able to see her and to validate her and to correct my behavior in that moment and turn it into something that was more pleasant and making a very different impact in that one interaction. And so we have that choice from minute to minute, from interaction to interaction with our kids, with our spouses, with our partners, with our teams, with our colleagues. And in choosing very differently moment to moment, it really sort of increases your opportunity of experiencing well-being and more calm from day to day. Yeah. So Sharon looks like she's on the move. But I want us to go back to the point I mentioned, sis. I think it's really important to sort of paint the picture from a global perspective, some of which we talked about a little bit, but to hone into that a little bit more, if you would. And there are 4 or 5 points that I think.
39 people on here, and I've only heard so far from Colleen, Janet, Vanessa, Natasha. Like, who else is here? Can you guys just I just want to open the door, invite you all to step into the room.
And Donna, hi Donna.
In the chat box so we can feel your presence and see who is in the virtual room with us. Just inviting you to please have a seat at the table for our conversation.
Can I interject for a second, guys? Can I put you on mute and just come in? Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? I don't know why. I'm in Treasure Beach, so just the internet is just very bad here. So just wanted to comment and put my 2 cents in, because I had so many moments over these last weeks and months where I just completely, there were moments when I was such a non-mindful parent, when I was literally holding my son by his shirt collar like I'm gonna kill you, for interrupting maybe a meditation thing, and it is a meditation webinar I was having or something. There have been so many moments over these last few months that I've had to really pull myself back and to remember that I've made a choice to be a mindful parent, and what does that look like? So, I just want you guys to know that, Rain and Sky may be mindful practitioners. I may be a yoga and meditation teacher, but we are human beings and we all suffer from, coming out of our consciousness zone, or coming out of our mindfulness zone. And I think a good starting point here is to, first of all, to just meet yourself where you are in this, as we said, unprecedented time, with loving acceptance. And that mindfulness, like yoga, like meditation, is a practice. It's not something that you choose. I want to be a mindful parent or a conscious parent, and then all of a sudden you are one. No, it is constant practice. And so, I just wanted to interject that there have been many moments where I went out of my conscious, my commitment to try to be a loving, accepting, calm parent, and I certainly wasn't. So just to say, be gentle with yourself as we navigate these times, because there's no manual, right? There is no before or after pictures here. We are living it, we are doing it, and we need help from people who can give us those tools, and then to remember that these tools have to be put into practice. All right, I'll turn it back over to you guys. This has been awesome.
So
thanks, Sharon. Yeah, Sky's going to read a comment, but I just wanted to reiterate that not because we're mindfulness practitioners and masters doesn't mean that we don't have our bad days, right? The tools and the strategies and the study that we've been doing for years just allows us to experience life differently and experience it in a way that encourages more peace and calm, but that it is a practice and it is a choice that you make, as I said, minute by minute. It's not something that happens. And in practicing it, you are retraining your brain, right? And so it requires consistency. And to your point, give yourself a break and just, you know, reaffirm that you are doing the best you can, because the judgment is also really important to be aware of, because the judgment is what perpetuates the suffering, right? Being hard on yourself that you can't keep it together, or that you're, you know, scolding at your child and all of that. So these are all components of mindfulness. But I just wanted to, reaffirm.
Yeah, what is arising from me, which I think is helpful framing for everyone, is the two wings of the practice, right? And we are active participants in both mindfulness practices and the practices of compassion, right? So if you are sitting here reflecting on your parenting in this year and relating to the stories that Sharon and Rain have shared, and you're starting to beat yourself up to say, oh my gosh, it's so true, I shouted at the, you know, ex-child and I did so and so, that is the natural instinct, is to do that.
That's right.
To beat up yourself, right? We are our worst critics. And I think the insight, what is helpful about doing that, is the insight to realize and acknowledge and be aware, have the self-awareness to say, I've had those moments, right? And my gosh, consider how did that impact my child? And that insight is really powerful, but don't stay there, right? Bring the second wing of the practice, which is compassion, to that insight. Now you have awareness that maybe you haven't shown up as the parent that you would want the history books to say that you did, and that's okay. That moment of awareness, that insight can ignite the change that will propel you to be the kind of parent that you want the history books to write about you, right?
The moment of consciousness.
That moment of consciousness of saying, wait a minute, that moment of realization, that moment of insight can ignite the change that you want to see in yourself. So just want to encourage folks to do that introspection, to have that awareness, to bring the mindfulness of presence, to glean the insights of how you've been showing up, and to not meet that with judgment, but instead meet it with compassion, to say, I'm human, right? And maybe I haven't shown up in the best ways possible in every single moment. I'm doing my best and I'm making a commitment to do better, right?
That's right.
And we're, you know, I think it's really helpful, Sharon, to paint that context and just normalize that, guys, this is like unheard of. I mean, there's no Netflix show that can compete with life in 2020, right? Like, I'm waiting for that show to come out,
Pull up
right?
a chair and get your popcorn.
I mean, this drama, suspense, like comedy, I mean, horror movie,
Drama.
like it's all in one, right? Like nobody could have written this life. But before we jump into content, I just want to acknowledge Sana, who says, I have a 10-year-old son who is so aware of himself that he's now even quoting Sharon.
I love it.
And telling me to be in loving awareness. I'm very blessed to try to be a mindful parent in this day and age. Amen, Sana. And how powerful that you are bringing your son with you on the journey.
Yes.
As Rain said,
Kudos
to be
you.
that mirror for you, right?
Yes.
Colleen says, this is us. Anke, who is in España.
Oh, your
mi
favorite
país
place.
favorito.
Yes, I lived in Spain. She lived in Spain for a
Sana
while.
would love to connect. Instagram me. Anke says, I'm taking a break in the sun with my 9-year-old son from Belgium for a week on the beach. Oh my God.
Enjoy.
And Donna says, and we are so lucky to be living in this time. This is us, grateful for so many things, such as this forum. Amen, Donna. We are so grateful to have you all in this space with us. Sana says, breathing really helps. Breathing is one of the tools that if you have not embrace the power of breathing in your personal life and practice as a parent leader, please take that with you today.
Please.
As long as we have our breath, we have life, right? And so this is a tool that, unlike the cell phone that we have to carry around with us, the breath is always with us in every single moment of every single day. When we encounter some moment of challenge, you're in a meeting, someone says something that is really annoying and you're frustrated, you have your breath. Right? As refuge, as a place of refuge.
And refuge.
So that's the second question I want people to be asking themselves. The first was, who do I want the history books to say that I showed up as in this moment? That's question number one. Question number two is, what are some of the tools that I can leverage in creating a space of refuge, right? Sharon shared that you didn't have the silence, the space, physically and mentally, to do the work that you had planned for your life at this season, right, of 2020, because of the kids being home and everything that provided. So where do you go for refuge? Where do you find that silence? Where do you seek that refuge, right? And I think that's a very powerful question that is part of building your resourcefulness as a parent leader in this moment, is to create for yourself those systems of refuge. And your breath is one of them, right? It takes 30 seconds to just close your eyes and connect in with your breath and just really connect to the life force that is within us and be grateful for that. And my goodness, what that moment just did for me, taking the 15 seconds to do that. That is available for us morning, noon, and night.
And it doesn't require...
And it doesn't require anything, just tuning in and the power of... You know how you plug your cell phone in when the phone is going to die and it gives you a recharge, it repowers your phone? The breath is a charger for us, right? Absolutely. It can be a source of recharge. So to the point of the picture, because I think this context is really important, Sharon, if we can take a moment to characterize, right, for everyone, the world that we're living in right now, and to put it into perspective. You might ask yourself, what does the war in Afghanistan and life in 2020 have in common? And you might think, war and life in 2020? VUCA is the answer to that question. VUCA is an acronym that, listen to this, experts use to characterize the conditions of war in Afghanistan, right? Volatility, this pace of life. Like, do you guys notice that the pace of life is just feeling really fast, and the plot twists just are coming a lot faster and more frequently than we would like?
We're the busiest we've ever been.
We're the busiest we've ever been. The pace of life is the fastest it has ever been and the slowest it will ever be. Scary. Buckle up, because it's going to get faster, right? There's a level of unprecedented uncertainty, right? When will COVID end? When will the kids go back to school? Yeah. Will I ever travel again, right? We don't know, right? If I go into the supermarket, are there chances of me being infected? Is it airborne or not? Who is going to win the election? Like, the uncertainty is unprecedented. That's the U. The C is complexity, right? Think about what it takes for us to go grocery shopping. Hello? Gloves and mask and Lysol and wiping down and right? Joining a line and all of the steps that were not there before, as just one example of a simple transaction that we all need to do that is so much more complex than before. And the ambiguity of it all, right? Just not having the details, not having all the information to be able to make informed choices.
And the surety and the safety of that certainty.
Yes,
right?
I mean,
that sense of safety is very important for us. And when we don't have that sense of surety and safety, it registers as a threat for us, right? And we know that physical threats and social threats are registered in our brain in the same way. So exactly. just as if we were standing in the middle of a road and a car is about to run us over and our brain registers you're in danger, when we see or experience a social threat, the brain registers the same way. It's the same message of danger. So when we're having this uncertainty and volatility and ambiguity, our body registers that we are under threat.
Yes, we are under threat. Siege.
Yes.
We are things we have taken for granted. Yes, Sharon.
Yeah.
So just like wrap your head around that. This acronym of VUCA, which is used to characterize war in Afghanistan, is being used to define the moment that we are living in right now. So translation is, we are living in warlike conditions. Our brain is registering this experience as if we were at war. Okay? Like that is the gravity of what we're experiencing. So everything, any and everything is fair game because we didn't sign up to go to war, right? We're being drafted into a war zone that we did not ask to participate in, right? And so how are we arming ourselves? Are we going to go into war without the ammunition that we need, the bulletproof vest that we need, and all the things that we need? That is the question that we should be asking ourselves.
How are you going to armor up?
How are we armoring up ourselves for this unprecedented war-like war zone that we're all living in?
Yeah.
Donna says, oh yeah, I don't think that. I'm not sure what that comment is. Buka is V for volatility, U for uncertainty, C for complexity, A for ambiguity.
And an example just came to me. So a very good friend of mine from law school, who is also Noah's godmother, reached out to me and said, you know, Rain, I'm not sure why I'm feeling this increased anxiety. Nothing much has changed for her. She left her private practice and started homeschooling her kids years ago. So the shift from having that physical separation of school and home and school and work, for her, it wasn't a big shift for her, right? She's used to having her 3 kids at home and homeschooling them. And she was trying to really understand, why is it that she's feeling this way? Why is it that she is not able to find the peace and the calm? She says, nothing much has changed for me. It is that VUCA environment that she is feeling and experiencing, even though not much has changed for her and her family.
It's
right?
The perception of threat that
it is
has
the perception
changed,
of
right?
threat.
Her routine is not different. The conditions of her life
are the same.
In her household might be the same. But the perception of threat because of the environment that we're operating in,
the volatility, the ambiguity registers, and it has a profound impact on your psyche, on your, mental capacity, on everything that you do. And so I think that's important.
Could I interject with a question here? Can you guys hear me? Give me a thumbs up, yeah? So total agreement that we are in warlike conditions, and we are feeling the cumulative effect, the universal forces of that war, and the consciousness of a fear, anxiety, uncertainty, frustration, negativity, all around us, pervading our very selves and our being. I had an interesting thing happen with my daughter, my youngest, Noah, who is 12. She's also dyslexic. Okay, so online school is a very big challenge for her. And her school, Hillel, announced 2 weeks ago that they were going to now finally go into a hybrid model where you could come in and do in-person school if you choose, or you could choose to stay home. And at first she's like, oh my God, Mom, I'm going back to school. I want to go back to school. So I signed up for her to go back in-person school. And then it was supposed to start Wednesday. Today's Thursday. She was supposed to go back to school yesterday. And somewhere around last weekend, she started to get very anxious and very nervous. And I was like, what's wrong with you? What's going on with you? It's like, I'm changing my mind. I don't want to go back to in-person school. I'm like, Noah, come on, you gotta get back to reality. You have to, and it's also better for you with the dyslexia for you to be one-on-one in front of the teachers. And her anxiety just kept growing and escalating and escalating. And I got a little off my zone because my old paradigm parenting brain was, of course, you must go back to school. This is, get your big girl panties on and get back to school and back to real life. And I was kind of forcing the issue and then noticing the anxiety really, where she just, on Tuesday night, she was a mess. And I eventually, after discussing a lot with my husband and other parents in this situation, I decided to listen to her and say, okay, Noah, if you're not ready to go back to school, as long as you're willing, when you're at home, that these parameters have to be followed and you have to do this, you can stay and do distance learning. And it was just a huge thing because part of me, there's a little sadness. Like, I don't want my kids never to go back to in-person school. I mean, we learned, this is how we all became who we are now because of school life. So my question, I just wanted to share that, there's going to be some decisions that you are going to have to make as parents coming up soon. And you really have to embody that conscious parent mentality and have a fine balance between listening to your kids and also making sure that you are helping them to not just get into a comfort zone of being at home, but that you have to challenge them within that paradigm. So the question I had too is that pervasive fear, negativity, anxiety that we're all feeling. How do we, obviously our children are feeling that too, right? They may show it in different ways. They may show it in acting out. They may show it in just becoming addicted to social media and Netflix, which a lot of the kids are. I have to confess. I mean, try to be a mindful parent, but my kids just, their go-to mechanism now is just to zone out. And as a parent leader, sometimes it's hard to find that extra effort to say, come on, let's go and do an adventure. Let's go and do a charity event. Let's go and bake something in the kitchen together. It's a lot easier to say, just, stay on your Netflix. I can then get some work done, So how do we as conscious parents let our children know that we're very aware that this is a very scary time and that we are just doing what we can to protect them and create a safe zone, a bunker for them in their lives? I mean, do you have any tips or tools for that?
Sky wants to offer something. I think first, kudos to you to seeing the value in canceling the noise and really just tuning in to Noah and really giving her an opportunity to share and to communicate what she's feeling and allowing her to feel heard, right? In a time of grave uncertainty, which is what we just explained, security is number one. So we know that uncertainty is the basis of anxiety. It is a lack of surety. It is a lack of being able to know what to expect. And so my guess would be that what was coming up for Noah was, I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know if I'm going to be safe. I don't know how this is going to work. I don't know, right? It's the uncertainty that is creating the trigger for the anxiety. And so in that moment, allowing her space to really communicate reassured her and gave her a sense of support and security that despite the uncertainty, I have solace in myself, but also in my parents who I can lean on for support. So I'm sure after that exchange, you may have noticed a difference in how she was experiencing that moment, right? You perhaps saw a diffusion of the anxiety, just knowing that mommy heard what I said and it's important to her, right? So really just listening to your kids, affirming their fears. If she's saying, mommy, I'm scared. Oh, come on, Noah. It's, you have nothing to be fine. You're going to be fine. Your parents, right. your teachers are going to do everything that they can. Affirm them and validate them and said, absolutely, I get it. It is scary. It's scary for me too, right? That goes a long way. It seems so trivial, but it is what provides them that grounding, that footing, that security that they so desperately need. Similarly, I have seen elevated anxiety in my Noah, who is 7 years old. And it is that attunement that has allowed me to even notice what it is, right? It is that knowing of my daughter, knowing of parenting, knowing of child development, whatever it is, supporting them in a way that we can support them. If nothing else, even if you haven't studied child development and you're not a social and behavioral sciences professor, just listening to them and validating them is a really important first step, right? And normalizing their feelings. And then if it is a case where you believe that you need to get them more support, you do that. So I reached out to a colleague of mine who I met at a parenting conference, Dr. Joy. She specializes in anxiety for kids.
And her last name is Joy.
And her name is Joy, like Dr. Joy, how perfect. And I called her and I said, hey, listen, I need some support. I need some help. And I explained to her what was going on with Noah. And she said, absolutely, let's have a chat. And we arranged for Noah and her to talk. And she doesn't normally work with kids so young, but she said, I want to get a sense of Noah's emotional intelligence to see if I can work with her, right? So like Sana said, her child probably has a very high EQ, a very high emotional intelligence IQ, right? And so she met with her, and Noah was so excited just to have space to be heard, just to talk about what she's feeling. She went to Sky and said, Titi, I have something exciting to share. I met with this lady. She's a feelings, what did she say? She's a feelings doctor, right? She talks about feelings and how exciting. And so just also communicating to them that we're going to figure out a way to support you, right? We're going to figure it out together, and we're figuring it out as a family, just to give them some hope. Because listen, when we look at depression, the base of depression is a sense of hopelessness. And so if we are able to give them some hope, right, that we're in this together, we're figuring it out together, and, you know, it will go a long way. Absolutely.
I'm just cognizant that we have only 4 minutes left, and I wanted to offer a perspective. I don't think we have time to really unpack it, but you mentioned something, Sharon, that I think is common for the both roles that we play, the role of parent and the role of leader, which is having to make decisions. Mm-hmm. Our kids come to us so that we can make decisions with them, and we sometimes tell ourselves that we're making decisions for them, right? Which is the traditional paradigm. And as leaders, we're forced to make decisions about business, about the organization, make decisions for our teams. And what I think is important to say about that is that because of the VUCA environment that we're operating in, the perpetual state of threat and fear that we're operating in, understanding that that is compromising our ability to make decisions, right? And so activating different parts of our brain to help us make these choices as we're trying to navigate, right, is to not fall into, when we get into a state of emotional reactivity, when we're not centered, when we're not grounded, when we're not mindful, we can default to emotional reactivity and we're not making sound decisions, right? But simply by tapping into the breath, to activate the parasympathetic nervous system will bring the thinking part of our brain back online, because when we get emotional, it's as if it goes offline. It like literally
we have lost our minds,
right? Yeah. You do something and someone says, have you lost your mind?
Or what were you thinking?
I wasn't thinking because that part of my brain was not at the table, right? Mm-hmm. And so this is another way that mindfulness and bringing that conscious awareness, that quality of presence to the moment, to our experiences, can support us in making better and more sound decisions, that we're not being reactive in the moment, right? And co-creating with the family. I mean, Sana mentioned the example of her kid wanting to go on a play date. It's establishing as a family, what are the guidelines, what are the guardrails that we are choosing to operate with as a family, so that as you're making decisions, you're grounding them in the principles that you've established ahead of time. So for example, we have set a principle in this household that we don't want to catch the COVID, right? That's Noah's language. We don't want to catch the COVID. And so when she says, Mommy, can I do so-and-so? Noah, what are the chances of you catching the COVID if you choose to do that? You're right, Mommy, I don't want to catch the COVID. Okay, so this thing that you wanted to do you still want to do it? No, Mommy, because I don't want to catch the COVID, right? Now you're grounding them in a set of principles that they can feel like they are part of the decision-making process, right? That you're not imposing, because then that imposition is taking away from their sense of autonomy, their sense of fairness. This is not fair. Invite them into the process as young as they are. Noah is 7, right? And she has a seat at the table in terms of how we're making decisions as a family, because those principles were outlined in advance. Yeah. So we have 1 minute left, Sharon. So much to say. I was hoping to do a practice with everyone.
Can I just interject here too, as a parent leader? So there are, so many of these beautiful people here with us today. are parent leaders. So they're leading their parents, and they're also leaders in their community, they're business owners, whatever. On the upside, in my experience too, it has been a very beautiful thing for my children to be at home and to witness me doing what I do and to be a leader in my own community. Normally they're away and I'm working all day, and when they come home, I'm just mom. But now I am the leader of this community, and this is what I do, and this is how I teach, and this is how I show up. And I am teaching them to the responsibilities of showing up and, being committed to what you do and practicing what you preach. And so, as with all the downsides, there are some incredible upsides for your kids being a witness to what you do and how you do it. And so they're watching you. They're watching your every move. So just make sure that you are living in integrity, that what you're saying is actually what you're doing, because they are listening and they want to see and make sure, mom is being, or dad is being authentic. And the other thing I just want to close with is that for me, the greatest gift that has helped me to navigate these times is my morning ritual of waking up before anybody else is awake to do my morning practice, which is about a 15 to 20 minute meditation, journaling, and a movement, something that is moving my body, moving my breath, stretching, yoga, going for a walk or a run. That early morning start ahead of everybody else, so that when everybody wakes up, I've already taken care of me, so that I can show up as my best self for you, has been the key to I don't know if I have handled this pandemic with 10 out of 10, but definitely I've done the best that I can with it, and I inspire you guys to do the same too. And if you are feeling, I just want to end with this and then hand it back over to you guys to close, but if you're feeling like you're completely off track with your own self-care because you have been putting everything into your children, you need to think about pulling back and also taking care of yourself. There's only one of you. When the plane is going down, you got to put the oxygen mask on you first before you put it on your children. So if you feel like you're not breathing right now, if you feel like your routines that serve you, exercise and healthy diet and meditation and rest and self-care, are completely out the window, and you're feeling the effects in your body and your mind, then please consider coming on my 21-day reset program. If you click the button right there, you'll see more about it. The deadline to sign up actually is today. It just happens to be that we're having this webinar today. But if you do sign up today, you get $100 off the program, and it is absolutely life-changing. And it will, when you learn to take care of yourself, as Sana, I know there are quite a few people here who are in my programs, you become a better parent and a better leader. So I'm going to say to you girls, thank you so much. And when you get back on, so when you come back on and you can hear properly, I want you to tell everybody where they can find you on social media, on websites. How can everybody find you? Because there's so much more that you have to offer. Their Instagram page is so inspiring and it's beautiful. So thank you so much for being here. Let me turn off my mic now and you go.
Thank you for that, Sharon. Oh, so much. There is so much more we could have gotten into and shared and delved into. Mindful morning routines are huge for us. It's a way for us to prime our mind and really armor up for the day. We talk about our meditation practice as, armoring up and getting ready for whatever the day provides. And that's really what mindfulness has been for Sky and I. We've had different journeys in terms of our relationship with mindfulness, but what is similar is the consistency of the chaos and the waves continually coming. And so mindfulness has really been our surfboard, right? Because you can't change the reality, but you can change the way you experience the experience. And so mindfulness has been that tool, that resource for us. So Thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and engage with your amazing community of parent leaders.
The freebie, before
we have
everyone
a freebie.
leaves, the freebie that we are offering is a mindfulness starter kit. It answers the number one question that we get, which is, how do I get started? This all sounds great.
Yeah.
But how do I start? And this mindfulness starter kit will help you on that journey.
Yeah,
so
huge.
Kenesha just put the starter kit in the chat. You can also find us at Transcend LLC. And I just want to end with a point of reflection, because Donna pointed to this. Your closing, Sharon, pointed to this, which is that, yes, this is a moment in our history, right? And what we choose to make of this experience will become our tale of that history. And so we can swim and sit in the negativity of it, in the VUCA-ness of it, or we can choose to transcend that and create a different kind of experience. No pun intended on the transcend
All
there.
pun intended. All
pun intended. Right? So to Donna's point, we can choose to not see it as warlike conditions. We can choose to wake up and enjoy the sunshine. We can choose to wake up and go smell the roses, so to speak, right? This is an opportunity for us to rewrite the script for ourselves. And yes, the VUCA-like conditions exist. And yes, it is in a warlike zone. And this can also be the best vacation we have had with our kids, if we choose to make it that, right?
Yes.
Sharon, thank you so much for having us, and for everyone's time, for your presence, for your commitment to being amazing parent leaders in the world.
And for your investment in those roles.
And
You're
please
taking
join
the time
the community. Check us out on Transcend. Connect with us. Share with us what this webinar has meant for you, questions that you have. We are on this journey with you and would love to continue learning from you as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Natasha.
You guys, thank you so much. And with that, we will close. You are also welcome. I am so grateful for this format and to be able to bring in incredible people onto this platform and to be able to share it with you all. This is why we need this community. We need to be able to have a safe space to talk about the issues that are affecting us all. And so God bless all of you. Go out there and be the best parents that you can be, and just know that you just have to meet yourself where you're at with loving acceptance. And yes, this is a different kind of war, but our ammunition is mindfulness. It is acceptance. It is taking care of ourselves. It is being gentle with ourselves. So God bless you and thank you.